My client ate a sandwich like she hadn't eaten in days, then whispered in her sleep, "Please don't make me go back there." When I finally asked what was happening, she shook her head and said, "Not tonight." I stayed beside her anyway. That was a year ago. Yesterday, I walked past her counseling office and she was singing to her twins. I swore that at least half of my customers were angels. Boy, was I wrong. On the surface, they're the sweetest people you'll ever encounter. For example, one time I had a customer that had a tattoo that was emotionally attached to a toxic ex, so I spent an extra 2 hours to help them figure out how to cover it up for free. But this one guy, showed up with his whole crew of motorbikers and demanded that I do work on them. Then this other time, this chick was asking for a whole tree on her arm. I was obviously happy to do it because it was simple and easy, but when she rolled up her sleeve, what I saw was effing disgusting. There was a huge bruise in the middle, one that couldn't have been a cause of anything other than the hands of another man. I didn't say anything, just tilted my head slightly upward to make eye contact with her. Her eyes were filled with shame, like she was pleading with me not to say anything. I just nodded and asked where she would like the tattoo. Usually while I draw, me and the client talk about whatever. Gossip, their kids, the news, literally anything. But this lady was responding to everything I said with just one word, so I gave up fast. After I was done, she thanked me profusely, in a way that was more than just for the tattoo. It was for my silence. I reassured her that it was no problem, and gave her a smile to say, "Come again when you're ready to sort this out." Because if there's one thing I learned from my younger sister and her abusive boyfriend, it was that people can only be helped when they want to be. And there's no point going to court if both the victim and the abuser denies it ever happened. It wasn't even 10 days later when she showed up again, asking for a semicolon tattoo on her left ankle. "Oh, what is it for?" I asked, playing dumb. "Just a reminder to keep going." Her voice was sheepish, like she didn't want to give away too much. I saw her face contort as she placed her foot on the mat, like even just moving was enough to cause her pain. It took everything in me to fight the instinct of shaking her shoulders and forcing the confession out. That day, she didn't even tip me, but took a business card and told me she'd be back. I never saw her again, until 2 months later, that is. It was a Friday night and she had a completely black eye. Looked like she hadn't slept in days. This time, she asked for just a straight line on her upper thigh. It was obvious that she only came as an excuse to be away from whatever was going on at home. "Hey, I had some spare food and water I never ate. You're the last customer of the day. Do you want some? Otherwise, I'm gonna have to throw it out." I could literally see her heart beating at 2 times the speed before agreeing. And as soon as I handed her the sandwich, she barely ripped the plastic off before shoveling it down her throat, as if she hadn't eaten in days. Her tattoo would only take 10 minutes, but I dragged it out to 2 hours. We were at the 1 hour 45 minutes mark when she finally broke the silence. Well, kinda. She pulled out her phone and pretended to text someone. I could see in the reflection of her glasses that she was just on her settings app. "Hey, my friend just told me she won't be home to let me in the front door tonight. Is it cool if I... Actually, you know what? Don't worry about it. Never mind. Of course you can stay here. I was actually planning on pulling an all-nighter to work on some stuff." I was lying through my teeth, but she bought it. Or pretended to anyway. I could see her trying to hide her excitement, but the corners of her lips were turned up all the way. That night, she slept on the tattoo bed while I pretended to work on my computer. I had just finished another game of League of Legends when I heard her laughing in her sleep. I turned around smiling, but that's when I saw tears streaming down her face. I sat down beside her. "Please don't make me go back there. Keep me safe, please." I held her hand and nodded, and suddenly, she shot straight up and finally explained what was going on. Her boyfriend was a police officer, and a well-respected one at that, except when he went home every day, instead of watching TV or drinking a few beers, he'd spend the night wailing on her. He called it their little game. She had nowhere to turn, except for now. I opened my mouth to ask more, but she shook her head. "Not tonight," she said quietly, before turning her back and going back to sleep. The next morning, there was a knock at the door. It was the police. 3 officers stood at my door, their uniforms crisp in the morning light. The lead one stepped forward, and my stomach dropped. Officer Derek Johnson, all 6 feet 2 inches of him, with those cold eyes that scanned right past me into the shop. His hand rested casually on his service weapon. "We're looking for Rachel. Her family's worried sick about her." I kept my face neutral while my mind raced. Rachel was hiding in the supply closet, barely 15 feet away. I forced myself to look confused, tilting my head slightly. "Haven't seen any Rachel. Just closed up for the night." I gestured vaguely at the empty shop behind me. Derek pushed past me without waiting for an invitation. The other 2 officers exchanged uncomfortable glances but followed him inside. One was older, graying at the temples. His badge read Martinez. The younger one, Williams, couldn't have been more than 25. "We have probable cause. Missing person case." Derek's voice carried that particular tone cops use when they expect immediate compliance. I pulled out my phone and started recording, following them around my shop. "This is private property. You can't just barge in here." Derek ignored me, methodically checking behind the counter, in the bathroom, anywhere a person might hide. Williams drifted toward the supply closet, and my heart hammered against my ribs. That's when Rachel's phone vibrated. The sound came from her jacket, draped over the chair where she'd left it. Derek's eyes narrowed instantly. "That's her ringtone." His voice went dangerously quiet. I said it myself. I lunged for the jacket before he could. "Oh, that's mine. Client left it last week. Same ringtone. Weird coincidence, right?" Derek snatched it from my hands, his facade of professionalism cracking. He dug through the pockets and pulled out Rachel's ID. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Williams had reached the supply closet. His hand was on the doorknob when he called out, "Should we check in here, Sarge?" Derek waved him off too quickly. "She's not hiding in a closet. Check the bathroom again." Something in his tone made me realize the truth. He didn't want witnesses to whatever he'd do if he found her. Martinez must have sensed it too because he stepped between Derek and the closet. "Let's file the report at the station, Chen. She'll turn up. Always do." Derek's jaw clenched, but he couldn't argue without seeming suspicious. He pulled out a business card and pressed it into my hand hard enough to leave marks. "Call me immediately if she shows up, for her safety." The threat behind those words was crystal clear. They left, but I waited a full 5 minutes before letting Rachel out. She emerged shaking, tears streaming down her face. I locked the door and pulled the blinds. "He has a tracking app on my phone," she whispered, "but I left it at home as a decoy. I knew he'd check there first." She pulled out a tablet from her bag and showed me a hidden cloud account. Photo after photo of bruises, cuts, documentation spanning 2 years. The bruises formed a clear pattern of escalation. Arms, ribs, places that wouldn't show in uniform. The shop's landline started ringing. Derek's number flashed on the caller ID. I let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again and again. By the 4th call, I unplugged it, but not before hearing the increasingly unhinged messages he was leaving. "You don't understand," Rachel said, her voice hollow. "His network goes everywhere. Other cops, judges, even my therapist reports to him. Last time I tried to leave, he had me put on a 72-hour psychiatric hold." My phone buzzed. A text from my sister Mia lit up the screen. "Cops at my work asking about you. What's happening?" Rachel saw my face and started hyperventilating. He's mapping your connections. He'll threaten everyone you love until you give me up. I checked the security camera feed from the store across the street. Derek's personal car had been circling the block every hour since they left. Then my phone rang, my parents' number. Sweetie, the police just came by for a wellness check. Said they were worried about you. What's going on? After I hung up, Rachel broke down completely. I have to tell you something. I'm pregnant. That's why I finally ran. I couldn't let a child grow up in that house. The weight of her words settled over us. I made a decision and called a number I'd memorized but never used. A contact from the Domestic Violence Underground Railroad. I need a safe house. Tonight. The voice on the other end was calm, professional. Location? Getting there meant crossing the entire city. Derek had patrol cars at every major intersection. I could see them on the traffic app, stationed like a net waiting to close. Rachel put on my spare wig and jacket. We took back alleys, ducking between buildings, staying off main streets. Halfway there, a patrol car appeared at the end of the alley. My blood froze. Williams was driving, and he definitely saw us. Our eyes met through the windshield. He slowed the car to a crawl, maintaining eye contact, then he kept driving. The safe house was an apartment above a Vietnamese restaurant. The owner, Kim, met us at the back entrance. When she rolled up her sleeves to unlock the door, I saw old cigarette burns matching the pattern on Rachel's arms. No words were needed. Survivors recognize each other. You'll be safe here, Kim said, but we all knew it was temporary. I wonder what's really going on with the tattoo artist here. They seem pretty calm for someone who just got pulled into this whole mess with Rachel and Derek. Derek's reach was too long, his connections too deep. This was just the beginning of something that would consume all our lives before it was over. As I left Rachel in Kim's capable hands, my phone buzzed with notifications. My shop's online reviews were being bombed with 1-star ratings. Harbors criminals, unsafe environment, owner is unstable. The war had begun, and Derek had just shown me he'd use every weapon at his disposal. But looking back at Rachel's face in the window, her hand protectively over her stomach, I knew I'd made the only choice I could live with. Williams was parked outside my shop when I got back. He didn't get out, just handed me a piece of paper through the window and drove away. It was Derek's duty schedule for the next month. The battle lines were drawn. Some cops knew what Derek was. The question was whether that would be enough to stop him before someone got called. The morning news broadcast Derek's face across every screen in the city. He stood at a podium in full dress uniform, tears glistening as he pleaded for information about his mentally ill girlfriend who disappeared without her medication. The performance was flawless. Concerned boyfriend, dedicated officer, pillar of the community. I watched from Kim's restaurant as he dabbed at his eyes and thanked the public for their support. Rachel watched the broadcast on her phone, her hands trembling so violently she nearly dropped it. The lies poured from Derek's mouth with practiced ease. He spoke of her bipolar disorder, her history of paranoid delusions, the danger she posed to herself without proper treatment. Every word carefully chosen to discredit anything she might say. My shop phone rang nonstop. Rachel's mother sobbed through the voicemail, begging me to help find her daughter who desperately needed medical attention. Her father's message was angrier, demanding I stop enabling Rachel's mental breakdown. Derek had spent years planting these seeds, building a narrative that would protect him if she ever tried to escape. The 1-star reviews multiplied overnight, my business page flooded with accusations, harboring criminals, unsafe environment, owner mentally unstable. Each review posted from different accounts, but the writing style was unmistakably similar. Derek's network was mobilizing, and my livelihood was the first casualty. A health inspector arrived at my shop before I'd even finished my morning coffee. He wore a satisfied smirk as he cited violation after violation. Improper storage temperatures, inadequate ventilation, contaminated surfaces that had passed inspection just months earlier. The closure notice went up immediately, bright red against my window. Derek appeared at my sister's workplace 3 days in a row. Each visit lasted longer than the last. He'd stand by Mia's desk in full uniform, asking questions about Rachel's whereabouts with exaggerated concern. Other employees started avoiding Mia, afraid of guilt by association. Her manager pulled her aside on the 3rd day, suggesting she might be happier working somewhere with less disruption. Mia quit that afternoon. Her daughter had started asking why police officers kept visiting mommy at work, whether they'd done something wrong. The fear in a 6-year-old's voice was enough to break anyone's resolve. Derek knew exactly which pressure points to push. Rachel attempted to file a report at a precinct across town. She'd barely started explaining her situation when the desk sergeant excused himself to make a phone call. 5 minutes later, he returned with a patronizing smile and Derek's number on a card. The blue wall was everywhere, impenetrable and absolute. I reached out to a journalist friend who'd covered police corruption before. We arranged to meet at a park outside the city, away from potential surveillance. She arrived with a recorder and notebook, eager to document Rachel's story. The interview lasted 10 minutes before a patrol car pulled us over for a broken taillight that wasn't broken. They confiscated her equipment and strongly suggested she reconsider interfering with an ongoing investigation. Kim's restaurant faced an ICE raid the following week. Agents stormed in during the lunch rush, demanding documentation from every employee. Kim's papers were perfectly legal, had been for 20 years, but that didn't stop them from shutting down service for the entire day. The message was clear: help Rachel, pay the price. Rachel broke down that night, curled in the corner of the safe house bedroom. She insisted on returning to Derek, couldn't bear watching innocent people suffer for her choices. I held her while she sobbed, feeling the baby kick against her ribs. The life growing inside her was the only reason she'd found courage to run. Now even that felt selfish. My parents called the next morning, voices shaking. Someone had spray-painted cop killer across their garage door in the night. The security camera that should have caught the vandals had mysteriously malfunctioned. When they'd called to report it, the officer taking the statement suggested maybe they should talk to their child about the company they keep. Derek's partner showed up at my closed shop alone. Officer Ramirez knocked on the back door until I answered, his face drawn with worry. He glanced around nervously before explaining that Derek was spiraling, becoming reckless. Other officers had noticed, were getting uncomfortable. He urged me to convince Rachel to return before someone got seriously hurt. The warning in his words was unmistakable. This wasn't a threat, but genuine concern from someone who'd seen Derek's capabilities firsthand. Williams arrived at the safe house at 2 in the morning, out of uniform and clearly terrified. He handed me a USB drive with shaking hands, explaining he couldn't watch anymore. The drive contained Derek's duty schedule, patrol routes, and something more. Body cam footage other officers had tried to delete. Frame after frame showed Derek's violence, fellow cops turning away while he disciplined suspects with excessive force. The footage revealed a pattern spanning years. Williams had done his research, found 3 other women who'd filed complaints against Derek. All had either recanted their statements or disappeared entirely. One name made Rachel gasp: Sarah Hendricks. Derek had told her Sarah moved to Florida for a fresh start. The truth was darker. Sarah's body had been found in her apartment, ruled pulled a sewer slide despite friends insisting she'd never shown signs of depression. I contacted the FBI through a domestic violence advocate who knew channels outside local jurisdiction. Agent Carol Shaw agreed to meet, her expression grave as she reviewed our evidence. She admitted they'd been monitoring Derek for months but needed concrete testimony to move forward. The bureaucracy of federal investigation moved slowly, especially when the subject's uncle served as deputy chief. Derek's response was swift and brutal. My shop windows shattered in the night, glass scattered across the floor like deadly stars. Snitch was painted across the walls in red letters 3 feet high. The insurance company declined my claim within hours, too high risk given the ongoing criminal investigation. Rachel discovered she was carrying twins during an ultrasound at a free clinic. 2 heartbeats fluttered on the screen, doubling both her joy and terror. The stakes had tripled overnight. 3 lives now depended on escaping Derek's reach. Kim connected us with an underground network specializing in relocating abuse victims. They could provide new identities and safe passage internationally, but the cost was staggering. $50,000 for complete disappearance. My savings account held $12,000. The crowdfunding page I created was shut down within days, flagged as funding criminal activity. PayPal froze my accounts based on suspicious activity reports. Marcus Rodriguez contacted me through encrypted channels. Derek's former partner from 5 years ago had been in hiding, carrying evidence of Derek's first victim. He offered testimony in exchange for protection, proof that Derek's violence had started long before Rachel. The price of his cooperation became clear when my nephew was arrested on fabricated substance charges, spending a night in county jail with violent offenders who somehow knew he was connected to someone opposing a cop. My nephew emerged traumatized, bruises covering his arms. His cellmate had casually mentioned that Chen sent his regards. An 18-year-old kid paying for my choices. The guilt was suffocating, but backing down now would make his suffering meaningless. Rachel attempted sewer slide 2 days later. The news report about my nephew had broken something inside her. Kim found her in the bathroom, pills scattered across the floor. The hospital's mandatory reporting meant Derek would know their location within hours. We fled before the paperwork was even complete. The car chase through downtown was like something from a movie. Derek's voice crackled over police radios, coordinating pursuit of a dangerous fugitive. A helicopter joined the hunt, spotlight piercing through alleys as we abandoned the car and ran. Williams appeared at a crucial intersection, his patrol car conveniently stalling just as Derek tried to pass. His suspension came through before we even reached the next safe house. The FBI finally raided Derek's home. What they found turned even seasoned agents' stomachs. Torture implements, trophies from victims, Rachel's jewelry she thought she'd lost, Sarah's driver's license preserved like a hunting trophy. Derek went underground immediately, but half the force still protected him. Sightings poured in from across the city, officers helping him stay one step ahead. My shop burned to the ground on a Tuesday night. Security footage showed uniformed officers standing watch as flames consumed everything I'd built. Derek's crying performance on TV deserves an Oscar. Watching him dab at his eyes while calling Rachel mentally ill is like watching a wolf complain about sheep being too fluffy. The fire spread to adjacent businesses before firefighters arrived. Mrs. Chen from the flower shop next door was hospitalized with smoke inhalation. The community that had once supported me now saw me as the source of their troubles. Death threats arrived daily. My phone buzzed with graphic descriptions of what would happen if I didn't convince Rachel to return. Former customers crossed the street to avoid me. The tattoo community blacklisted me as too dangerous to associate with. Rachel went into premature labor during a particularly stressful night. We rushed to the hospital under assumed names, but Derek's network had infiltrated even medical facilities. A nurse casually mentioned that Officer Chen had been asking about pregnant women matching Rachel's description. We barricaded ourselves in the delivery room. The emergency C-section happened while I stood guard at the door. 2 tiny fighters entered the world at 32 weeks, their cries weak but determined. A boy and a girl, both struggling to breathe on their own. The NICU became our next battleground. Derek appeared in surgical scrubs, having slipped past security with his badge. Rachel's scream alerted staff, but their response was sluggish, conflicted. I tackled him before he could reach the incubators. As security finally pulled him away, he whispered his promise. He'd cull them all before letting us win. Agent Shaw personally led Derek's arrest in the hospital. The threat against newborns had finally given the FBI the urgency needed to act. Derek's last words before they dragged him away were simple. Blue protects blue. Even in custody, his confidence remained unshaken. The arrests cascaded like dominoes. 17 officers indicted for corruption, evidence tampering, conspiracy to obstruct justice. Williams testified before a grand jury, detailing years of cover-ups and intimidation. The police union lawyers arrived in force, defending every accused officer pro bono. Rachel testified via video link from a secure location. She described the torture, the threats, the forced pregnancy when she'd tried to leave before. The jury sat in stunned silence as evidence photos displayed the systematic escalation of violence. Derek watched from the defendant's table, his eyes never leaving the screen. Marcus Rodriguez never made it to trial. A professional hit disguised as a random shooting silenced his testimony forever. The message was clear. Cooperation had consequences that extended beyond Derek's reach. We were dealing with something bigger than one violent cop. The witness protection offer came with impossible conditions. Rachel and I had to decide within 24 hours whether to disappear forever. My family gathered at my parents' house, the tension thick enough to choke on. Mia held her daughter close while my mother paced the kitchen, wringing her hands. My father sat silent, his face aged 10 years in the past month. I explained the situation as gently as possible. The FBI couldn't guarantee our safety without complete relocation. New identities, new city, no contact with anyone from our past lives. My mother's sobs filled the room while Mia's daughter asked why everyone was crying. Rachel waited at a secure location with the twins, still in the NICU fighting for every breath. The medical bills were astronomical, but witness protection would cover everything if we agreed. The alternative was staying and hoping Derek's network wouldn't reach us from behind bars. My nephew arrived halfway through the discussion, still jumpy from his night in jail. He flinched when car doors slammed outside. The bruises on his arms had faded to yellow, but the psychological damage ran deeper. He begged me to take the deal, to get away before more people got hurt. The decision tore me apart. Abandoning my family felt like betrayal, but staying meant putting them in perpetual danger. Mia understood first, pulling me into a fierce hug. She whispered that protecting those babies mattered more than anything. My parents took longer to accept it, but eventually my father nodded, tears streaming down his weathered face. Kim's murder changed everything. The restaurant owner who'd sheltered us was found dead in her kitchen, the scene staged to look like a robbery. Nothing was stolen except her life. The message was clear. Derek's reach extended beyond prison walls. At her funeral, other survivors from her network stood together, a silent army of women who'd escaped violence only to live in perpetual fear. The trial moved at breakneck speed speed once the FBI took over. Federal prosecutors presented evidence methodically, building an airtight case. Rachel testified from a secure location, her voice steady as she detailed years of systematic abuse. The defense attorneys tried to paint her as mentally unstable, using Derek's carefully planted medical records. But the physical evidence spoke louder than any gaslighting attempt. I testified about the harassment campaign, showing documentation of every threat, every act of intimidation. The prosecutor displayed photos of my burned shop, my parents' vandalized home, the systematic destruction of everyone who'd helped Rachel escape. The jury's faces grew grimmer with each piece of evidence. Derek's network began turning on each other as plea deals were offered. Officers who'd looked the other way suddenly remembered details they'd conveniently forgotten. The blue wall cracked, then crumbled entirely. 17 officers were convicted on various charges, their sentences ranging from probation to 20 years. The day of Derek's sentencing arrived with unexpected drama. As the judge read the verdict, 45 years to life, Derek lunged from his seat. He knocked over the defense table, charging toward where he thought Rachel was sitting. The bailiff moved to intercept, but Derek was faster, fueled by rage. The first shot caught Derek in the shoulder, spinning him around. The second hit his spine as he continued crawling forward, screaming threats. Court security surrounded him as he writhed on the floor, paralyzed from the waist down. His final act of violence had sealed his fate. He'd spend his sentence in the medical ward, dependent on others for basic care. Rachel and I entered witness protection 3 days later. The goodbye with my family happened at a nondescript office building. FBI agents standing guard. My mother clung to me, making me promise to stay safe. Mia slipped a photo into my pocket, her daughter's kindergarten picture, something to remember them by. The twins were transported separately, still requiring specialized medical care. Their premature birth had left them with underdeveloped lungs and other complications. The boy, especially, struggled with every breath. We were told they'd meet us at our destination, but the wait was agony. Our new city was nothing like home. Different climate, different culture, different everything. The FBI set us up with new identities. I was now a freelance graphic designer, Rachel a medical billing specialist. Our backgrounds were meticulously crafted, complete with employment histories and references that would check out if anyone investigated. I found a small commercial space and slowly built a new tattoo shop under my assumed name. The first customer who walked in had familiar bruises on her wrists. She didn't say anything, just pointed to a butterfly design in my portfolio. I understood. Word spreads in certain circles. There's always someone who needs a safe place. Rachel struggled more with the transition. PTSD manifested in unexpected ways. The sound of sirens sent her into panic attacks. Uniformed security guards made her freeze. The twins' health issues added another layer of stress. We found a therapist who specialized in trauma, someone who didn't need to know our real names to help. 1 year passed in our new life. The twins grew stronger, finally breathing without assistance. Rachel found purpose in helping other abuse survivors navigate the medical system. Her billing knowledge became a tool for reducing hospital debts for women fleeing violence. Then the news came through our FBI handler. 3 witnesses in related cases had been murdered. Someone was selling information from inside the witness protection program. We were moved again with 6 hours notice, leaving everything behind except what fit in 2 suitcases. The second relocation was harder. The twins were old enough to notice the disruption, crying for toys we'd had to abandon. I couldn't open another shop, too risky to stay in one place long enough. Instead, I worked from apartment to apartment, building a client base among other people living in society's shadows. Rachel trained as a nurse's aide, work she could find anywhere without extensive background checks. She came home exhausted but fulfilled, finally helping people in a tangible way. The twins started walking, then talking, blissfully unaware of why we never used their real names in public. Derek died in prison 2 years after his conviction. An inmate whose sister had been brutalized by police cornered him in the medical ward. The attack was swift, brutal, and final. The news reached us through official channels, delivered with clinical detachment. Rachel cried that night, not for Derek, but for the girl she'd been before he destroyed her life. With Derek gone, we cautiously tested whether it was safe to surface. I visited our old city wearing a disguise that would make a Hollywood makeup artist proud. The tattoo shop space stood empty, plywood over the windows. Someone had spray painted "Thank you for saving her" across the boards. Fresh flowers lay at the doorstep. Williams met me at a diner outside town. He'd made detective, working in internal affairs to root out corruption. He showed me photos of the memorial garden planted where Kim's restaurant had been. The community hadn't forgotten. He warned that some of Derek's associates still held grudges, but the immediate danger had passed. Rachel's parents desperately wanted to meet their grandchildren. The way Derek just happened to slip past hospital security with his badge makes me wonder about the depth of corruption here. How many people were still looking the other way even after everything came to light? The risk assessment took months, involving federal agents, psychologists, and security experts. Eventually, a supervised meeting was arranged at a neutral location. Watching Rachel's mother hold the twins for the first time broke something inside me. Family connections severed by violence could never fully heal. We decided to maintain our hidden life despite Derek's death. The twins deserved to grow up without the shadow of their biological father's crimes. Rachel was pregnant again, this time by choice, with a child conceived in safety rather than violence. Our underground network had helped 17 women escape similar situations, each one a victory against systems that protected abusers. 5 years after that terrifying morning when Derek appeared at my door, I ran a thriving tattoo shop in our new city. The name on the door wasn't mine, but the work was. Rachel had become a certified domestic violence counselor, turning her trauma into a lifeline for others. The twins started kindergarten knowing only that their mother was brave and I was family. Our apartment walls displayed photos of the life we'd built, birthday parties, first days of school, normal moments that felt miraculous after everything we'd survived. Rachel's pregnancy progressed smoothly, this baby growing in an environment of love rather than fear. We'd created our own family from the ashes of violence. The underground network continued operating through encrypted channels. Every few months, a woman would arrive at my shop with familiar bruises and a certain look in her eyes. I'd offer her water, a safe place to rest, and connections to people who could help. The cycle that started with Rachel had become a lifeline for others trapped in similar nightmares. Some nights, I still dreamed about my old life, my parents, Mia, the shop I'd built from nothing. But then I'd wake to the sound of the twins laughing, Rachel humming in the kitchen, and remember that some prices are worth paying. We'd lost everything and everyone we'd known, but we'd gained something precious, the chance to save lives and build a future free from violence. The shop's appointment book stayed full, my clients drawn by word-of-mouth recommendations from people who understood discretion. Each tattoo told a story, covering scars, marking new beginnings, reclaiming bodies from trauma. My art had become a form of healing, just as Rachel's counseling gave voice to the silenced. We never spoke of returning to our old lives. The twins knew us only by our assumed names, their past erased for their protection. Sometimes Rachel touched the semicolon tattoo on her ankle, remembering the woman who'd walked into my shop years ago, desperate for any excuse to escape. That woman was gone, replaced by someone stronger, someone who'd learned that survival sometimes means letting go of everything except what matters most. Our story wasn't unique. Countless women lived similar shadows, fleeing violence that wore a badge or a suit or a friendly smile. But we'd found purpose in the hiding, creating ripples of change that spread far beyond our small circle. Every woman who passed through our network carried the message forward. Escape was possible, survival could become thriving, and sometimes the greatest victory was simply continuing to breathe free. Alright folks, that's a wrap. Appreciate you letting me ramble right along with you. What a ride it's been. Let's do it again sometime. Subscribe for more content like this.